on. Very grateful to have this workshop here and to live and work here on this site. And I'm with Cineworks. I'm the executive director here. And it's wonderful to have the third Anamorphic workshop here, Anamorphic on a budget. It's always wonderful because Tito's so encouraging. And we have now actually beaten our record here. 17 people have signed up for this. And there are more attending here right now. So thanks everyone for coming, and thank you very much to Tito and all his friends and family and everyone's significant other who is here making this possible. Welcome.
Thank you. All right, now I got to figure out how I put this lav back on because I just slammed it out. Am I still good? We're good. Okay. Are we streaming? We are streaming. Okay. Well, thanks, Dan. We have started. Yes, this is the third iteration of this workshop. Hopefully the best one yet. All other ones had rocky starts, so far we're doing a little better, but not that far better. I forget, Blake, let's roll with our slides in there to start. So I call this multiple things. The slides will say Anamorphic Cookbook. The handout says Anamorphic on a budget. So those are the two things that I have been focusing on. The cookbook is a bigger project inside of the channel. And who is this? Oh, it's me. Oh, my God. This is my last headshot. It was taken by this person here. This is Lila Fahadin. She's my sister. She's a DP. She's also helping us out today. Blake back there is operating our switcher. Everything that's going on that screen and that's going on to YouTube at the same time is being handled by Blake. We've been here for 4 hours now. Blake's been on this operation for a very long time now. We have Chris McBride over there pulling focus and operating our demo camera for the, I don't know, first half, sort of this process. And this is Ariana, this is my partner, being in front of camera because none of us wants to, right? So that's that. Actors make the movies, you know. Whoa, the other way. So yeah, if you are here, my name's Tito. I've been talking about anamorphics on YouTube since 2015, so that's 8 years now. And before YouTube, I've been doing it for another 3 years. You can read this whenever you want. Introductions. What brought you to this workshop? I need volunteers. What brought you to this workshop? Okay, you first.
Reputation.
My reputation. What's your name, sir?
Miguel.
Miguel. Nice to meet you, Miguel. I'm glad my reputation precedes me. I hope it's a good one.
It's a really good one.
You're not expecting a bloodbath in here. It's like, oh yeah, I was there.
You're an anamorphic legend.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so I am responsible for your financial demise.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay, so who else? Any more further volunteers? What brought you here today? Yeah, that's always the hard part, which is what usually attracts people. It's like, how do I do this on the cheap? So hopefully we'll address some of those aspects today. I forget names. Avi. Okay, excellent. Okay, I'm going to carry on because I always run out of time. So if you want, okay, another rule of this. If you have a question at any time, interrupt me. Please do. Don't hesitate. Questions are more important than anything else in this. Because then you go home with a question and then you're like, what am I going to ask? How am I going to do this now? So anyway, if you have questions. Did you ever use anamorphics before? Raises hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, sort of halfway. How was that experience? Super fun. So 1 vote for positive. I know Chris hated it when he did it. Chris was like, my job's really hard. Everything is out of focus. They do non-centered compositions and it all looks like trash. So, so 1 positive and 1 negative. Anybody else? Super positive, okay. But you were in the DP. That's okay. What were you doing there?
Just direct.
You were directing. Well then, if it was super positive for you, then
It's hard to learn.
Yeah.
After a couple.
nice. What did you use? Or what have you used?
Lomo Anamorphics.
Nice. We got
Ryan
1.
Glover's in the Facebook group. You might have seen him post a bunch, but
Yeah.
his Lomos, and then I've used the Atlas as well.
Nice. We have 1 Lomo here today. I have a set. So we have a 35 we're going to be looking at. We're also going to talk about what are Lomos. Now, I kind of hate this question, and I haven't gone through the work of getting rid of it. Is there an important anamorphic film in your life? So hints are like Blade Runner, Star Wars, Indiana Jones. What else is there? I think I pressed the button. Oh, which one and why? So it's a 2-part question. Nobody cares. It's a hard question. Okay. Well, I'll play some random things while we do this. I think this is the one, and I gotta make sure that there's no sound left on this. Okay, Blake, are you pulling? Do you see my screen? Okay. So this is a stuttery version of a multitude of classic anamorphic films from Blade Runner to Apocalypse Now and so on and so forth. I also have papers here because I forget stuff all the time. So let's see where we are here. So I'm going to let you get away with not answering this question. It's fine. It's okay. It's not personal. What is special about this look? Why do we care? Why do we care about anamorphics at all?
Classical cinematic look.
It's a cinematic look. I love it. I love this question because it's bait. It's always the same word. So I'm going to pause these. It's Chinatown. This is Chinatown. Because, oh my God, get out of here. The anamorphic look. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so there's something before. Okay. It's a cinematic look. What else? What else?
Along the lines of that, it's a distinctive look that's not capable. That's not possible to recreate with sphericals.
Okay, so it's something that you can't recreate with sphericals.
Well,
Kind of. What is special about it? What makes you care? What brings you here today?
It's like learning process.
Okay. Learning and exploring. What makes it difficult for us to explore the universe of anamorphic lenses?
Price, a lot of the time.
Price, okay. Lots of nods, lots of price, yeah. So if I am to read the slide, the aesthetic has been strongly connected with epic narratives, sci-fi settings, and immersive, fantastical environments that helped shape the modern vocabulary of cinema. It's like Star Wars. It's like Indiana Jones. It's Blade Runner. I wonder if it's Harrison Ford or the lenses that makes this thing. But anyway, so let's be more cinematic. And this question always leads to this answer. 3 times I've done this, 3 times the first answer is like, because it is cinematic. To which, what does it mean? What does cinematic mean, like on a personal level? Give me words. Is it special? You can agree, you can just like, yes, no. Is it special? Okay, it's special. Is it about texture? Is it about depth of field? Is it about lens flares? Is it about oval bokeh? What is it? What is the thing about anamorphics and that make them cinematic to you? What is the one? Yes, Jack. More immersive. Brings you into the space. Great. We're going to get to exactly that point. Yes. Anamorphic lenses have a wider field of view, so you end up with a picture that literally goes around you. Today we don't have as big theaters as we used to, but that was one of the key aspects of the success of anamorphic lenses. So what does cinematic mean? What else? Words. Anyone can chime in, by the way. If you guys have words that you want to contribute with.
Shallow depth of field.
Shallow depth of field. I love it. Yes, shallow depth of field. So anamorphic lenses will give you a different type of bokeh from spherical lenses. Like what we have right now, if you look over at that monitor, is a spherical lens. So this is a 35 millimeter, and if you look at the little lights in the background, they're all circles. And as soon as we switch into anamorphics, those circles will no longer be circles. They're going to be something else. Like looking through here, you can see that this is a circle. Yeah. You can also see that this is a circle. But if you look through it, this is definitely not a circle. So there's some trickery going on, and hopefully we'll figure out what is going on. There are two main reasons for which people choose to film with anamorphic lenses. It's cinematic. Okay, what about it being cinematic brings you in, makes you want to use that type of lens? What about it?
Well, I think what like anamorphic lenses also revolutionized was the capability to create like this scope aspect ratio that otherwise would have been just kind of faked and difficult to do back then on film.
Okay. So anamorphic lenses allow you to create a wider aspect ratio that was very challenging to do in the past. So it's about, would you say that's more about the story? It's like it allowed you to tell different stories?
Yeah, like I think it definitely, for one, I mean, there's a historic aspect, I guess, it's like trying to get more people into theaters,
Mhm.
different look, but then second is like the immersion that you mentioned as well,
Mhm.
of like certain stories and stuff.
Okay, so the story becomes more immersive as you increase the screen size and you bring your audience in. That's one aspect. The other aspect is because it's cool. A lot of times you just want to use a piece of gear because it's cool. And you're like, I want to use this because it's for me. Or I want to use this because it makes me feel like I am using the same gear as some of these classic films. This is Ben-Hur. And quickly jump into the Lego Movie. Not a smooth switch at all. So it gives you the words. I do this too much. So we could say that we have two main purposes. Why do you want to film with anamorphics? So on one side, you want to infuse your stories with a feeling of nostalgia. You want to connect with your viewers through an already established big budget look. You're like, I want to be using the same tools that Marvel movies are being filmed on. I want to have the same glass that Kubrick didn't use in anamorphics, but Ridley Scott was using for a lot of work. That's one aspect. So they're for your audience. You're using that as a way to shape your visuals for your audience. And the other way is a sense of inspiration to use the same tools as masters of the craft, successful filmmakers and storytellers. That is for you. So if you're using the lenses to serve a story, that's one thing. And if you're using the lenses because you think they look cool, that's a different thing. They're both very valid points. It's very important you know which one is working for you in any given project, because you don't want to force a piece of gear onto a story that doesn't work with it. Let's say I am telling a story about buildings. So buildings are mostly vertical, and then I try to use an aspect ratio that is extremely horizontal. That's not going to go well. But I'm like, no, I have these lenses. I must use them for this. It just doesn't go. So that's one thing. Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. That's just what works for you. What am I here? So the origin of the name. It comes from the Greek. And anamorphosis stands for ana means again, morph means shape. You combine those two things and you get reshape. So you're reshaping the image in only one axis. And so how did this whole thing begin? How did it begin? 1914. First World War. They didn't even know it was the First World War. It was just the World War at that point. The French are, I really should have checked these slides. Yeah, so the French have these tanks, and they're fighting Germans, and I don't remember if Italians at that point, but definitely Germans. They have these tanks. The problem with the tanks is they have this much of a window to look into the battlefield. Old dude comes in at the time when people still had the job of being inventors. Guy creates a lens. His name is Henri Chrétien, and he creates something that goes into that little porthole that gives the soldiers inside of the tank twice the field of view outside. And then, not as a result, but coincidentally, they win the war and peace comes. It's like, great. So a tank was the origin of what we're using and obsessing about today. I just find that a very interesting factor. So this is 1914. Here we are, more than 100 years later, finally getting the chance of using these things on a small budget. But when did they actually take off? When did anamorphics become really popular? Guesses. Jack is moving. In the 50s. Yes, that is the right answer. So in the 50s, they become popular. We had this guy, 1914, making this up. Why did it take 35 years for it to actually get to film? He tried before. He tried in the 1920s. Other people tried in the 1920s. By the end of the 1920s, there were a few decent options that did exactly the same thing that they did in the 50s. Why did it not work? What was happening in the end of the 1920s? That was a much bigger deal for film.
The Great Depression?
The Great Depression, okay. So people are not going to the movies that much because they don't have money. Sound, yes. Producers were like, let's add sound to films. And that was a much bigger deal at that time than just like, oh yeah, it makes your screen bigger. And they're like, okay, cool, that's nice. So sound just was a guaranteed success, while anamorphics, don't know, not so sure. So what was, I already spoiled when this came up again. It was in the 1950s. That was supposed to be a question. 1920s. Yeah, so this is a Cine Panor. This lens is about this big. It's tiny. And this is sound. Yay, sound wins. So 1950s, we start to get into anamorphics again. And in 1952, we have This is Cinerama. Does anybody anyone familiar with the Cinerama process? Looking at you.
I saw some cinema doing. The original used, it wasn't really an anamorphic.
Yeah.
It was 335 mil cameras and blended them on a big screen.
Yeah. So for Cinerama, you would have this kind of contraption, which is 3 35 mil cameras rolling on 3 reels of film, and they would have to synchronize this on project. Why was it not that great of a deal?
Money.
Money? Elaborate on that.
Well, to elaborate on that, it's gonna be 3 times the cost.
Yep. So you have 3 times the cost. You're burning 3 times the amount of film to make a single project as well. And also, why is Hollywood struggling? Why is Hollywood having a hard time and coming up with like this thing that burns 3 times more money to stay alive? What? TVs. Yes. So all the American families were like, let's get TVs and let's just like Netflix and stay home, you know, not a big deal. Except TVs were like this big. So Hollywood, it was like, you know, Cinerama was a massive success. Like they made the promotional material for the format was, I think it was the second. Let me find out if I have this information here somewhere. I do not. It was one of the top 10 grossing films in that year. The promos, like Apple made a commercial for the new iPhone, and that played in the theaters, and people just went to watch that. And they're like, this is so good, I'm going to watch it 6 more times. So they're like, we can't do this. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of film. We gotta come up with something. So the 20th Century Fox remembered a little French guy from the 1920s, and they go like, yo, you made something a while back, you know, we remember you. Where's that thing? And he came up with a lens that looks a lot like this. So this is, pass it around, please don't drop it. It's a lens that isn't really a lens. It's more like an adapter. And based on that name, what do we know? What do we understand from it being an adapter? No? No thoughts? What does an adapter do? Okay. An adapter goes in front of the lens. That is exactly what it does. So they're like, yo, we can just put this little thing that in front of our regular lenses, or regular cameras, don't change anything else in the industry. All the cameras stay the same. All of the production stays the same. All the theaters can get wrecked and just like build new screens, increase capacity, add 1,000 more chairs, 2,000 more chairs, just like multiply the number of chairs. And we'll add 1 more of these lenses in the projection booth, and we're gonna be fine. It's gonna be way better than trying to like make these weird cameras for filming the Cinerama format. So let's get one of these adapters. And the fun thing is, these adapters are still around. Like they're very much kicking around. Leo's camera on Granville, they closed a little while ago. They had a liquidation sale in the beginning of the year, end of last year. And then I found myself one of these adapters for $5. Wow. But the folks at Cineworks got there before me, and they found 3 of those adapters for $5. You missed 2. There was another Bell & Howell. A friend of mine got it. So you have this, and then I'm going to try and go over there, and we're going to struggle about it. But we're going to struggle mostly with what happens. So let's go. This is Hollywood. We're gonna figure this out. Ariane, I'm gonna ask you to move forward because we want to struggle, and if we want to struggle for real. Okay. This is good. This should be good. Chris, let me know when you have her. Oh, you already do. Okay, excellent. So we have our focus puller. This is our spherical block. This is just as this. Like this is a 35mm camera. It's burning through film. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to make this a lot better. So boom, I pop an adapter in front of it. There's many things going wrong here at the same time. Anybody want to take shots at it? Like criticize, what's breaking? What's not working? It's warping the image. Okay, so let's say I'm like, let's find it. Whoop, that was kind of cool. So let's say we're here. Okay, what else?
Flares.
Okay, we got some flares. And this is like early 50s, so flares are bad. Yes.
In this case, image circle.
Yes, the image circle. So we have a very clear limitation. We can see some of the 35 mil. I don't know where I'm pointing that corner, but over there and over here. Chris is struggling. Why are you struggling?
I'm just checking.
No. You're. I want you. The answer that you're looking for.
Is finding the perfect sharps.
Yes, she's not sharp at all. So, not coincidentally, this also has a focus ring. So I'm going to try and get it here. All right, Chris, you find her. There she is. Okay, and now we're going to land this in front, and I'm going to try and focus it to Ariana's position. This is 5 feet, just under 5 feet. What did I kill? What happened? Okay, we're good. Everything's fine. I can't quite get it. I can't make it much better, but I can definitely make it worse. So this is a lot worse, right? What is the problem that we start to have here? Yes, you have to focus 2 things. So the first few, I'm going to take this and we're going to try to this one in a little. Let's see how this does. Well, okay, this also doesn't do it much better, right? Love, can you go 3 feet back? Yeah. All right. Yeah, there she is, and here she's not. So we still can't find her. She's not even that close to the camera anymore. That means we have another problem, which is close focus. So I'm gonna sit back again. Let's pass these guys around if you guys want to see it. One of this has the focus ring stuck, so you were not gonna be able to rotate it. But so what happened was 20th Century Fox went to Chrétien and was like, bring us those lenses, bring us all the lenses that you have. We're gonna put them in front of our cameras, and we're gonna just hire someone else to pull focus again. So they had two focus pullers per camera setup, and that was still way cheaper than having 3 strips of film running at the same time. They also had a big time trouble with close focus. Close focus was not a problem with spherical lenses anymore, but anamorphics brought that back. You need really well-corrected lenses to get good performance at close focus. I haven't given up on getting, I'm gonna try one more adapter and see if I can get sharpness on Ariana. I'm also gonna raise this because this flare is destroying my life in there. Okay, this might be better. So this is another adapter, and this is a 2 times. So let's see what we got here. Oh, hey, this is not terrible. Love, I might get you to move closer to me. I just need to unjam this. All right, here we go. All right, okay, all right. Let's bring you a little closer. All right, I'll let Chris find focus first because this is way harder to do with the disconnect. And then here we are. Bro, oh, it's because this is misaligned? No, it should not. Okay, go back like a foot or 2. Yeah. There you go. Okay. We're getting somewhere. It's not getting great, right? This is very compromised. To the point that I can't even demonstrate the thing that I'm trying to demonstrate. So we're gonna switch lenses. Chris, I'm gonna switch for that 35, the big chunky boy. Yeah. because there is a problem from working with adapters and close focus. It's open there. Thank you. Okay. Hopefully we'll be able to see it on this. Right. And I'm going to move your motor. Is this making sense? Any questions at this moment? Any concerns? Any
How
fears?
come they didn't like lens flares in the 50s?
Yeah, because they were artifacts. They did not like lens flares. They did not like distortion. All of those things that are very cool and good these days. In the 50s, they're just like, this is hurting my image. I absolutely despise it. So that did not go well. And it took a very long time for that to go away. Still to this day, like a lot of old-time DPs would be like, I don't like that flare. I don't want this. I want more contrast. I want my lenses to be cleaner. Okay. Just calibrating this thing, and then we're going to see if we can get Ariana in close focus.
Can I come closer?
Come closer, yeah.
Closer?
We'll find out in a second. Chris, go to mins when you have a chance. No, it's calibrating still. Okay, now we have it. Woo! Okay, we're at mins. Go more, the other way. No? It's rebelling? There. Okay, so 3'3". You can come in a little more closer. Maybe I lied. Yeah,
Right there.
there. Okay. It's hard to see, but to give a demonstration, Ariana, can you face us on this side? Okay, so pay attention to the shape of her face. Okay, now look in the camera. What does it look like? There's something off. It's just slightly off. It's not terribly. No? No clue. She's ever so slightly wider on there than she's in real life. This only happens at close focus. So that's a problem that the early adapters had, which is when you close focus, your squeeze factor goes down, which means that when you go for close-ups, all of your actors look fat. And actors did not love that. Actors' agents did not love that. Nobody that cared about their image loved that. So they would have clauses in their contracts that said, no, none of this. If this is a film made in anamorphic, we're not going to give you Elvis Presley. We're not going to give you Marilyn Monroe. That's not going to work. And that was a big problem because they needed those big-time actors to attract audiences to the theater. Like, oh, there's the image that I was looking for. Blake, can you get us our slides on there? Oh, thank you. So that is the Cinerama thing. Those are 3 projectors, and they make this giant screen. Which, cool, very cool. And this is CinemaScope. So it's 1 projector. It's a massive screen. They doubled the size of the screen. Like the lenses were calculated to be a 2x stretch lenses. So the screen increased massively. And the audiences were just like, oh my God, this is the best thing that has ever happened in my life. I must watch Star Wars 25 times. Where am I at? Here I am. They had these problems. Like even with all of these problems, this was still a massive success. This brought Hollywood back from the brink, and they managed to make big hits in lots and lots and lots of other movies. During the years, the format changed name a bunch of times. You had Cinerama, CinemaScope, VistaVision, Superscope, Techniscope, Todd AO, Technorama, etc., etc., etc. And CinemaScope was the only name that stuck. But, well, I thought I was going to... There's a sad conclusion to it, which is the actual CinemaScope process was dead within 10 years. Like, we still use the name, but we don't use the CinemaScope lenses anymore. There was a massive demand for these lenses in Hollywood at the time, and they were trying to find people that could make them good, because they still had all these problems. So we had multiple manufacturers trying to make those lenses in time, not being successful, and then there was one company that came in and kind of like fixed everything and changed the game. Let's see if I'm going to spoil anything ahead. No, this is it. Okay. I have a question. Where's the question? Yes.
Just wondering, in terms of the jump from, I guess, shooting on, you were saying the smaller scope that was used before up to CinemaScope.
Yeah.
Was there, I know resolution wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
But were they shooting on the same film?
Yes, they were shooting on the same film. So
was there a loss of clarity in terms of the projection, or was it just, and I'm just wondering how they could double the size and still keep.
yeah, so what the lens is doing is it's squeezing the horizontal axis into the film.
But when you're projecting it onto a larger
Yeah.
screen, does it still look? Would it still sharp?
That is a great. Oh, it would still be sharp.
Okay.
You would have special, like these. All of these that have been going around this room are projector lenses.
Okay.
So these would go in front of projectors. This has a sound in it, sound effects. These would go, like most of the adapters that you have today would go in front of projectors, and they would cost thousands of dollars. Schneider won an Academy Award because of one of these projection lenses, because it was so crisp and clear. So it worked, and it allowed them to use the full negative 4 perforation Super 35 frame, which is, it's fairly large. It's not as large as full frame, but it's fairly large when you double the size of it in the projection. Is this making sense? I'm getting the feeling it's getting a little confusing. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. But yes, please interrupt. Does anybody know Dan Sazaki's name from anywhere? Okay. He's the optical VP of Panavision. And Panavision was the company in the 60s that came in and changed everything. Because the founder was a guy named Robert Gottschalk, and Gottschalk just in his workshop got these anamorphics that didn't do good close focus, that distorted people's faces, that required 2 assistant cameras, like 2 focus pullers, all of that stuff. And he was like, I got to do something about this. So he put together a new mechanism to allow the lenses to focus. And as soon as he figured out that that was working, he patented it. So nobody else could do it. Smart guy, gotta say. His company's still going. So what he did was he could make the only lenses that could do better close focus and not distort actors' faces in Hollywood. So immediately, Panavision got all of the work. If it was anamorphic, it was Panavision. And those are the lenses that were used in all of those classic films. So that's Blade Runner, that's Star Wars, not Star Trek, and so on and so forth. All of these are Panavision films. And then Sasaki has these 5 things that are the definitions of anamorphic. One day I'm going to teach this workshop and somebody's going to give me one of these definitions and I'm going to be the happiest person alive. So the first one is bokeh. Blake, can we go to the demo camera? Let's hope it works. All right, bokeh. So we're looking at those light bulbs in the background there. What shape are they?
Oval.
They are oval, yes. They're ovular. And that happens because of the squeeze. So that's one of the traits of anamorphics. The other one is disproportionate breathing. This is kind of pushing. Chris, can you rack focus for me? Whoops, something died somewhere. Oh, it was this guy. It was a V-lock, right? I think it's the V-lock on the monitor that's dead.
Oh.
Yeah. The minute we need it. So disproportionate breathing. Okay, what is lens breathing? Okay, so when you're rack focusing, you're having a difference in the field of view. Yes, that is lens breathing. And in the matter of anamorphics, you have a disproportionate breathing. Anybody want to take a wild guess of what that means?
It's not consistent.
It's not consistent. Okay. You're on a good track.
Like-
Give me some more.
Depends on if you're on a long lens or a short lens, it might act differently.
Okay. You're giving me ChatGPT answers at this moment. But good attempt. Avi, you're going to take a guess?
Well, according to this,
I always encourage that to my students. It's like if you have a question and there's source material, go for it.
in the back,
Yeah.
it breathes like unevenly, like horizontally and vertically.
Yeah. So, Chris, are we back there? Oh, we are. All right. So let's rack to the background. Hey, skipping. I think we're skipping.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do this up and
Okay. Well. Wow. So you can see the image doing a lot more of this than this. Each anamorphic is going to kind of do this differently, but the idea is you have a difference in the amount of movement that you see horizontally and vertically. Panavision is just this. It's very spooky. It's amazing. But on the lenses we have here, there's a variety of results. On this one, you can see some general upscaling of the image, but also it feels like it's doing this and breathing off to the sides. We have streak flares. Where's that flashlight? I'm going to go full. Chris, I'm going to switch that lens, because that lens is sucking for this motor, and we're going to get rid of it. Let's do this. Let's do this 40. Woohoo! Oops, sorry. Tripping. Okay. So we have streak flares. Anybody want to take a guess at streak flares? It's kind of self-explaining from the name, but
blue horizontal flares.
yes. Yes, Star Trek, J.J. Abrams kind of vibes. I think I'm stopping this down. Let's calibrate this. Blake, this is 1.5. Thank you. So yes, why do you think they're blue? Or why did we go to blue? Why did we say blue in the first place? It's a coating, yes. But it's also established by Panavision. Like most of Panavision's most successful lenses in the beginning gave those flares. In this case, if my flashlight could do something, we would see that's not what happens. Okay, so what color is this?
Yellow.
It is yellow. It is definitely not blue. It's kind of trendy. There's a lot of changes in coatings. I think I can introduce just like a massive one by doing this low enough. Oh yeah. Where's that? Okay, Ariana is just in the shadows now. Good times. Boom. Here we go. Okay. So this is orange. This is not blue. How do we feel about it? Does it feel legit still? Does it look cooler? Does it look worse? It's certainly different. That's for sure. Then you have an organic focus roll-off. I find this a little bit of a cop-out because let's go to the demo camera again, Blake. So the argument here is, Dan Sasaki is saying, when you have your sharp areas, the way that anamorphic lenses transition into out of focus areas is organic. You can see where, like, that this has all of the elements of scam into it, right? It basically means that the lenses never get completely sharp. So in this lens, like, I'm pretty blurry back here. Even the center of it is usually sharp. But then as you go off to the sides, you have a bunch of focus fall off. And the way they transition from in focus to out of focus also plays differently compared to sphericals. Like if you look at your Zeiss lenses, if you look at your Samyang Rokinons, like even Sure, who makes anamorphics, you know those lenses are sharp. That's like, oh, we're going to use Zeiss, let's throw some Pro Mist on it. We're gonna filter it, we're going to soften it because we don't want it to be video looking. So the argument is anamorphic lenses will never be video looking. Kind of a lie. And the last thing is magnification and perspective, because since you have you have image squeezed in one axis, let's say that's a 35 millimeters. So I have a 35 millimeter field of view, but I am squeezing more into one axis. So I have a 35 mil vertical, and let's say this is a 2x lens. What is going to be my horizontal equivalent? 17.5. So that leads to a difference in perspective. It's more natural. Like when you look at the world, your eyes see more horizontally than you see vertically. It feels way more natural to look at a wider image than to look at a taller image. That is one of the things that allow you to frame a character closer, but without the distortion of like a super wide angle. You can still get the environment, but not distort your character. That's one of the biggest points there. Wow, conclusions. Okay. That was fast. That was surprising. It's not the conclusion. I lied. So we talked about the classics. We talked about stuff that happened in the 50s. Some point in the early 80s, anamorphics went down. Just like almost disappeared from big time movies. Like the amount of films that were shot in anamorphic lenses just went way, way lower. What happened around that time that could have triggered this?
Digital?
Okay, go on.
Just like the rise of, I guess, or tape-based stuff? Maybe, or-
Close. Digital was closer.
Okay.
Digital was closer.
Was it a de-squeeze thing? If they were shooting onto a sensor, they didn't have a way of, elongating that or putting it back into the anamorphic format?
Not exactly. So I'm gonna spin off of digital.
Okay.
Did somebody whisper something? CGI, yes. CGI, you had the start of like big CGI heavy films. So you would have, what are my examples? All my examples are gone now. James Cameron, the one with the water, what is that called? The Abyss? The Abyss. Ariana is a visual effects compositor, supervisor, so I would be surprised if she didn't have it. So that's when you start to have the rise of CGI. And what does CGI, early time CGI does not like? Aberrations. It's the same things that the cinematographers in the 50s didn't like. Any imperfections. Yeah. Texture, character, all the good stuff that we want today. So computers are like, oh, how am I going to deal with this lens flare? Or even worse, how am I going to deal with this distortion? How am I going to deal with this thing that is, when it's sharp, it's a circle, but when it's unsharp, it's an oval? How am I going to do with this? So it was cheaper to not use them. Like if you wanted CGI in your film, you would not use anamorphic lenses. And that held up for a very long time. What happened around that time as well was those very long zooms, like 24 to 290, maybe not that big, not that long of zoom. But long zooms were very popular, 37 to 85, 70 to 200, and DPs loved that. So they still wanted to get more out of the sensor, so they came up with rear anamorphics. And what rear anamorphics do is they squeeze the image at the back of the lens. So I'm going to pass this on. There's glass on both sides. You put this on the back of your lens, and what it does, it squeezes the image. Unlike your other anamorphics, like the other things that we've been seeing, where have we been putting the anamorphic glass in our setup.
In front?
In front. So you have your spherical lens and the anamorphic glass is going in front. That's what's messing up everything in terms of image quality. It's like, it's soft, it's glowy, it's flary, it's all of the things that we really want today. But when you put it behind the spherical, all of that goes away, all of that stuff. And you can also have way smaller lenses. The problem is you're also introducing a distance between the back of your lens and your sensor or your film. What does that do?
Focus changer?
No.
It makes it like a macro lens.
Okay, okay, closer, closer. So it makes it like a macro lens. Yeah. You can't reach infinity. Okay, yeah, that's a great point. If you're changing the distance between your lens and your sensor, there's going to be some consequence there. Even if you could reach infinity, you would lose some light. You're basically projecting the same amount of light onto a surface area further away. So you need something. The image is becoming bigger. You're trying to squeeze it, but the image is becoming bigger simply because of the distance. So what these rear anamorphics do is they also introduce some type of magnification. When you put that thing on in the back of your zoom is suddenly like, it doubles the focal length. If it was a 37 to 85, it becomes 60, oh my God, math, 74 to 170. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's like a doubler, except it doesn't double in all directions, it just doubles in one. And it also cuts some light. So you'd lose 1-2 stops of light. They could deal with it at the time. Nowadays, these are way more uncommon. Like this one is from Laowa, and when they made it, they were like, this is going to be such a big deal, and it never really took off. So you still need the lens to fit in the front of it, and not all lenses do. Like all of the samples that we have here today, none of them fit inside of that adapter. So I can't even do it. So that's one of the problems. The 80s go by. CGI is learning. In the early 2000s, let's say specifically 2008, there is a camera that hits the market that changes everything. It's probably the reason we're here.
Is it the RAM?
Yes, who said 5D Mark II? It's the 5D Mark II. It's the first camera that allowed people that didn't have thousands and thousands of dollars to record decent, like 35 millimeter sized video. And that changed everything because that camera was affordable. Even to this day, like you have $3,000-$4,000 cameras, which are nowhere near the cost of like an Alexa, which is $65,000-$70,000. So yes, that is fairly cheap. So now all of a sudden everybody can use lenses that only Hollywood could. Like all of your photography lenses that are incredibly like full of character and destroy your VHS camera, you can now use them. What happened? What do people do? Like the internet was also getting there, so what do people do? They make shit up. So they look back in the past and they're like, oh, well, yeah, in the 50s, people just put these adapters in front of like big-time cameras. I wonder what that does. And so they did. And that was the rise of the anamorphic adapters. Like that is where my graduation work was about. I was like, I want to make a cheap yet original anamorphic short film in Brazil in 2013. Brazil is like, stuff is very expensive, especially when it has to do with technology. So I was like, I'm going to test out a bunch of adapters and I'm going to figure out what's the best way to make this happen. And then I went and I tested a bunch of different lenses with a variety of adapters until I found what I wanted. And I had to you always have to deal with the same problems. Like stuff that we dealt with in the 50s, double focus, You have to deal with it, is what I was trying to do there very unsuccessfully. But it happened, and people use those adapters extensively. Like when I got into the YouTube channel and I started talking about adapters, they were already going for a long time. The Lomo that I have, I paid $5,000 on it. Some other people, like 3 or 4 years before me, paid $300 on it. If you look at it today, it's like $15,000 to $20,000. So it's because these lenses are not being made anymore. But you could get like this for $5. There is a chance you can find these for $5 today. It's much harder, but it was there and it still is. So in essence, you could do this thing where you spend very little money and you have a very high budget look. Like you have the anamorphic everything on your tiny, tiny budget. It's a bit of a pain. There is a section in this handout that has a QR code for a video where I'm talking about why I don't want to deal with adapters anymore. And it has to do a lot with rigging. Like you have to find the lenses that go well with this adapter. You have to find the specifics that will work with this. There are solutions that will allow you to make this into a, instead of having to focus 2 lenses, you focus only 1 lens. You put something in the front and that changes everything. So you have to work with a lot more problems. And I got disoriented just now, so if anybody has a question, this is a great time. Oh, thank you. No questions? Guys, help me out. Okay. What did I do here? Oh, here we go. So let's talk about adapters for a little bit. This is a 40 mil. This is a 40 mil spherical. This is a Canon EF 40 millimeters f2, 2.8, 2.8. Cool. This is the size of it. Let's say you put adapter on top of it. Okay. Let's say you put another thing in front of it so you can just focus on 1 piece of gear instead of 2. So we're like here. Is there anything on this table right next to me that is about this size? So what a lot of real anamorphics do is exactly that. Somewhere in here, the back, there's a 40 millimeter lens that is set to infinity. In front of it, there's a bunch of anamorphic glass. There's 2 pieces of anamorphic glass. Boom. In front of it, there's a focusing group. So when you rotate this focus ring, you can see a lot of movement in here. Where does that movement look like it is? In the front, before the anamorphic? Yes, that is correct. That is also correct. So this is a focusing group, and I think I'm going to mount this there because this is going to be great. There's many things about this. This is going to be fun.
Should I move back?
You can stay there. Here we go. We got him. Okay. I don't love how this heavy it is, but I don't have support. I'm going to steal this lens that you have.
I can calibrate this if you want to do that.
Okay, thank you. I think I pressed it for long enough. So that is the classic Atlas 40 millimeters. And recently they started announcing the Mercury series. So this is another 40 millimeters. It is considerably smaller. Also, if we look at that image, we're going to see that the corners, like, we lose the corners. That lens only covers Super 35, and this will cover full frame. How can this be smaller, cheaper, cover full frame? Question mark. Yes. So if you look at this front, you can see that this is a curved element. Like this is anamorphic glass, which means that the way this lens is focusing is not the same that our stack of glass is doing. It's not the same as that. Not at all. And by doing that, they make the lens lighter, they make the lens cheaper, and they make it able to cover full frame all in one go. So
How much is that one lens?
this, I think it's 5,000, right?
Is that how much
Yeah.
is the big one?
That is 10,000.
Wow.
Yes.
That one's not even released yet.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
It's for pre-order.
Question.
Okay, so if that is lighter and cheaper and etc., is that one considered better?
That is the best question ever. Like, that is what I'm here for. Let's look at it. By looking at it, do you feel it's better? We were just looking at the other one. The lens flares are different. That's an easy one. What else is different? It's soft. Which one? This one? This one feels softer? I agree. What else?
The color of the flare.
Yeah, so our flare here is very blue. This is much more like Panavision established blue. What else? It's hard to notice, but bokeh on this one is a little more elongated. Like this is a 2x lens. Does that make it better? Does that make it, I don't know, it's subjective. I'm a big fan of the best gear is the gear you have at hand. So if that's all you have, that's the best. We filmed some videos a while back, and we used the Atlas, and then we filmed another set, and we used Cook Anamorphics. Cook Anamorphics are like 30 grand. And I was looking at the image, and I was like, is this actually better? Or am I thinking this is better because it's 3 times pricier? And I could not reach a conclusion. So that was my conclusion. Like sometimes, because you know the price of it, you might be inclined to think it's better.
But was it easier?
Hmm?
Was it easier to use?
It was exactly the same. Yeah, it was heavier. That's for sure. The Cooks were heavier. So let me see if I'm missing something here. There is something that I'm missing. Yes. Wow, I just clipped the microphone for everyone who's live streaming. Apologies. So in the early 2000s, people just like get into adapters and start hacking away, trying to figure it out. There is one company in the 60s who made an adapter that would be single focus. That was ISCO in Germany, and then poof, they disappeared. So those adapters went for like $3,000, $4,000, because they had patented this single focus method, much like Panavision. So people had to hack away and figure out other ways to make their adapters work. And that was a pain for many, many years. That's also the reason why I started the channel, because I was like, adapters are cheap, adapters are great, let's go. I don't agree with that anymore. I still agree that adapters are cheap. I don't know if they're great. If you have only one adapter, you pick one, and you work your entire thing about that one, great. If you're making YouTube videos every week, and you have to change all of your gear every week, you're going to be sad all the time. I don't know. A friend of mine told me. Not personal experience. What else happened in like the early 2000s that changed things a little bit? Like we're seeing a lot more anamorphic movies these days. All of Marvel, Star Trek. Like the J.J. Abrams joke it's very real. There was a ton of lens flares in that movie. What was happening around that time? Yes! CGI finally caught up and figured out how to deal with lens distortion, with creating all of the imperfections that the glass would bring in, and replicate those things into computer-generated imagery. So it was no longer a problem if your original footage had a lot of character. You could just like turbocharger budget for post, and you would get it. You could still film with anamorphic lenses and get results. So, yay! That led to anamorphics becoming popular again, and then it led to adapter prices spiking because everybody wanted to be on the anamorphic train. That was also like the big success of the channel, and we got to a point where you couldn't find a decent adapter for a decent price. So some companies like Atlas or Sure, Greatjoy, Viltrox, SLR Magic, Laowa, all of these companies started to look into anamorphics and be like, yo, there's a lot of money on this. There's like a lot of money on this. So Sure came out with a 50mm lens in 2019. And they're like, this lens is going to be $600. And man, they still sell that lens. It was so incredibly popular, so incredibly popular that like this company used to make tripods. They would make tripods and they made one lens. From there, that one moment, they became a lens company. They made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? Yeah, they made 9 anamorphics since then, in the span of 3 years. We also had a lot of other companies, and the prices are like more competitive. Like when Atlas came out with the Urias at $10,000 per lens, people are like, finally, oh my God, anamorphics are so cheap right now. I don't know. I can't pay $10,000 on a lens. So when these other companies started rolling in, the lenses are like $600, $700, $1,100. There is a Viltrox over there that's like $2,700. Yeah, let's swap. Let's put that on there. Blake, it's 133 coming up. Whee! Okay. Chunky. Got it. Yeah. All right. Okay, thank you. No, you can stay there. Thank you. So this is one of the new lenses. This is half of the price of the Mercury that we had before. And this is a 50mm. What do we see about it at this moment that is different? I mean, yeah, what do we see that's different? Besides the focal length change.
The crop is less intense. It's not as 1.6.
Yeah.
Boxed in.
Yeah. So there's less squeeze. There's way less squeeze.
Could you tilt it up so we can see the flares?
The flares. I'm going to, yeah. I think I'm just going to try and bring the flare down because I contained it. No, I did not contain it. Oh, but I have more. Woo! Got him. Okay. So more lens flares. How do we feel about this blue? How do we like it? Not that intense, right? Yeah, I kind of like this a lot. Yeah, it's less Panavision. Yeah, the thing with the blue also is like when all of the cheaper lenses came out, they're like, oh, it's blue that you want? It's blue that you want. Yeah, right? Yeah. So they're like, blue saturation, 300. So when you get those lens flares, it's like, it's a blue streak on the image. It's not like, you can see the pieces of the flare coming together. And that kind of like shook the market and people started to go against blue. It's like, oh, it's too blue, it's too much, it's too much. And that's why we have like amber and orange flares now. You have white flares, you have all sorts of weird stuff now. But, okay, so we have way less squeeze. Somebody, you said less. The bokeh is not as pronounced. Like, it's way less. This is 1.33. So, what else? What else is there?
I think there's like less texture.
Less texture, okay. Elaborate on texture. What?
It's more sharp.
It's more sharp. Yes, it is more sharp. I also feel that. Just checking the time.
Less of an organic focus fall off.
Yes, yes. It's less of an organic focus fall off. You're sharp, stay sharp. Yes, Abby.
Can you rack focus so we can see the breathing?
Yeah. Chris, can you hit us with it? It is pretty controlled. It is shockingly controlled, actually. I don't know if it was just me, but did you all see like a blue vertical flare on point there? Yeah. What's the deal with that? I don't know. Don't look at me. I also don't know the answer. I just saw that this is the first time seeing it. Yes.
This lens feels like what's the word? Spherical.
Yes.
It feels like a spherical lens with a sprinkle of anamorphic characters.
Yes. So this lens does feel like a spherical with a sprinkle of anamorphic. Like the flare is very nice. If we really, no, I'm forcing because I know the answer, but the distortion in this lens is pincushion. So you have your edges curving in, while most traditionally anamorphics have their edges bowing out. So we have barrel distortion traditionally, but this is a little bit of pincushion. So that makes a difference in how we feel this image. Yes.
Can you elaborate on like what emotions pincushion distortion causes versus barrel distortion?
Yes. Okay, that's a great question. I haven't had a chance to do that anytime before, so we're winging it. When we have pincushion, I almost want to, Chris, do you want to pan so one of the stands is towards the edge of the frame and hopefully we see it bend inwards? Yeah. It's ever so slightly bendy. Yeah. On that side, right? So my interpretation of it being pincushion, cooks also have pincushion distortion, by the way, is you have your lines from outside or the edges of the frame curving in. So you have like a compression towards your subject. Your character is like more tucked in. It's more of like an oppressive vibe to it. This is very abstract. We're going off. As opposed to when you have the barrel distortion, is like the environment is making way for your character. Like things are opening up for your story to pass or your characters to move. I should write this down. So that is my elaboration on pincushion versus barrel distortion. Is it true? I don't know. What I have experienced is all the people that did anamorphic adapters are like, pincushion distortion, that's garbage. I don't mind it so much, especially because you can fix it with like one slide and resolve. You're just like, lens distortion, 0.1, boop, fixed. So it's not that big of a deal. What else is there? So we have a variety of lenses here that we can play with. What do we want to see and talk about? Or what do you want to see at this point? Anything. It can be far-fetched questions, random things, abstract things. I love the distortion question. Okay, focus. Okay, Panavision focus. Let me see if I can pull up Panavision focus from somewhere. Maybe. Wow, that was still playing. Blake, I'm gonna go into something else completely random on my computer. Just letting you know. I'm gonna pull up this drive, and I'm gonna open the previous version of this presentation because not the PDF version. Here we go. Because there was a slide before I had slides for all of these things. So there we go. Hopefully. We're on Wi-Fi and we're also kind of like under the earth. So it takes a minute for it to load. Where's my distortion thing? It's not here. I am shocked. Oh no, it's gotta be disproportionate breathing. So once this image loads, I'll be able to show you exactly what the Panavision looks like. I'm just trying to think if any of the things I have here will do sort of that job, but I don't think so.
What lenses do you have right now?
We have 3 Mercuries, we have Atlas 40 Orion, we have the Viltrox, we have a Lomo 35 mil, and we have a Super Speed 35 mil. Oh, we also have a thing about flange. Okay, the flange thing is kind of interesting. So while this loads, I'm going to refresh and reload. Come on, just load me. It's 2 images, please. Please. Let's talk about flange distance, because it's not a lot of people talk about it. You have your lens, and you have your sensor. My hand's the sensor. So which angle is that actually going to do that? Okay, there is a place, below your camera's not going to see it, but if you're seeing my hand, there's a place where this becomes like a tiny, tiny dot, which is a projection of that lens over there. Right? Does that make sense? Yes? No? Yes? Yes. Okay. That is called the flange distance. It's the distance from the mount to the sensor. Each mount has a different flange distance. This is an EF lens. EF is 44 millimeters. So by the time I get this to be sharp, I know that there is exactly 44 millimeters between the back of this lens and my hand. PL mounts are 52 millimeters, and so on and so forth. Why does that matter? Well, with spherical lenses, what happens when your lens is further away from the sensor? We talked about this before.
You lose light.
You lose light, and it's macro. So you might lose your infinity focus. Very likely you'll lose your infinity focus. But you can still use the lens pretty okay, right? Not too bad. With anamorphics, so the way the spherical lenses focus is by moving the entire body of the lens. Like everything that's in here is moving together. And the way that anamorphic lenses focus, if we get this deconstructed adapter, is we have an element here, an element here. They focus by doing this. So they go further apart from one another. Meaning, if this is my system, boop, when my flange is good, good. Let's say I move everything forward a little bit. What happens? Unusable, yes. My spherical lens still works, but my anamorphic lens is completely out of whack. Like, it will not work anymore. And the consequence is what a lot of people experience with the Atlas, the first, like the Orions, which is they're very soft, wide open. Usually they're very soft, wide open if your flange is ever so slightly off. So what does ever so slightly off mean in real life terms? Less than a millimeter? Yes, less than a millimeter. It's like decimals of a millimeter.
In those scenarios, would you shim the Atlas to try and fix it?
Yes, so the ideal scenario is your camera, your flange is off on your camera and you need to adjust that. Or you can shim the lens so everything is a little further away from the mount. I'm going to mount some really weird thing on the camera now, because that's not an everyday thing that you get to see. Chris, yeah, that's... All right. Got it. Okay. Wrong direction. Okay. Boop. Okay. So this is a very strange piece of equipment. This is called the Dense Flange Distance Checker. And when you put it on your camera, you turn it on, this is what you see. How do you interpret this information?
Plus side is a little further along than the minus side.
Okay, so it's unbalanced. Like the plus side, the line is a little thicker on that side, right? Ever so slightly. So I'm going to try and adjust this until it gets to the right point. So I'm gonna, there's a dial here, and I can adjust it a bunch. So we're here, and I'm just gonna try to get it to be balanced. Are we good? Now I went too far to the other side, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is terrible. Let's see what terrible means right here. This is pretty bad, right? Pretty uneven. How off do you think I'm off? How off do you think I am at the flange? 0.5 millimeters, so half a millimeter. Any other wild guesses? 0.1 millimeters. All right. Who thinks it's closer to 0.5 millimeters? Raise your hands. Okay. Who thinks it's close to 0.1 millimeters? Okay, we got some volunteers at 0.1. And you are correct. This is 0.1 millimeters off. So on this dial, I can rotate until I'm like, this is kind of okay. So I'm going to look at the thing, and it says I am 0.01 millimeters off. The tolerance is between 0.1 and 0.2. So this means the lenses are going to be okay. When I first mounted this on this PL adapter, it was off by like 0.15. It was completely off. And the result was all of my lenses were off. Like every focus scale was off. All the anamorphics were performing under. All of those things. The sad part is that thing costs $5,000. The only reason we have it today is because Atlas sent the Mercuries and they were like, you got to make sure that these lenses are performing properly. So here's a tool for you to check it. And I was like, I love this. Let's use it.
Their own tool? Like they manufacture it?
No, that's I don't know actually who makes that, but there's a company that makes just that. Yeah. And with, yeah, pick one, Chris, whichever one. Maybe the 36, it's one of the gray ones. Yeah.
The distance may be off. Is it like a manufacturing error or?
Yes. So with cinema cameras, if you worked with Reds or Alexas or any of those things, you have a way to adjust that inside of the camera. You can move your sensor back and forth a little bit and compensate for it and make it work. With the cameras that I'm used to using are like the folks from the 5D revolution. The camera comes with the mount, and that's what you have. So it is a different tolerance in the manufacturers. They have, their tolerances are different. And sometimes it's so far off that you can send it back. The problem is, how are you going to get the tool that proves it's so far off that you can send it back? So there's the drama. And then when you add an adapter in front, like right now, this is an L-mount camera, but we have a PL adapter onto it. So if your adapter is a little off, then you have to address it. And that's what I did here. I added shims to the adapter so the mount would be correct. So this is our 36 mil. And we see a lot. It's very wide. Look at that flare. That's cool. Also the rainbows. Cool thing about rainbows. Let me just find out if I'm going to lie about the answer or not. Yes, I'm not going to lie about the answer. Okay. What do you think the rainbows are from? Iris blades? Close. Like literally close. It's something that is right behind the iris. So there's still body parts of the lens behind the iris, and when light hits it directly, it makes those rainbows. So when you stop it down just a tiny bit, you're shading just those reflective areas, and the rainbow goes away. It's very common.
Is it like an optical element? That's
No.
right behind? No.
It's the body of the lens. It's mechanical. Yeah.
Because the
yeah.
Cooks have a very similar characteristic where they have rainbow flares.
Yeah, and like the US 44, a lot of Soviet lenses have the rainbow flares, and they're mostly from this type of thing. Sometimes it's not right next to the aperture. Sometimes it's somewhere in the front, and then you can't deal with it. But I finally loaded my disproportionate breathing thing, so we can look at it. It only, oh my God, please. Okay. So this is a screen grab from a Panavision shot film, and right now we're focused on this window right in front of us. There's some light rain going on, cool. We see the background, there's like very pronounced ovals, and then when we rack focus to it, this is what happened. So we see almost no expansion horizontally in the image, but we see a lot of like vertical. It's kind of laggy, but it's more, that's what the Panavision thing means.
Is that basically them having fine-tune adjustments of the various optical elements inside and having them move in asynchronous?
Close.
Different ways?
Very close to they have the elements being adjusted differently. What we have seen so far is we have our spherical lenses, anamorphics in front, focusing unit in front. That's one of the methods. The other method is you have your spherical and your anamorphics, and you're adjusting those two. Like the spherical moves as a whole, and some of the anamorphics move back and forth, which leads to that thing where like people's faces go wild, and it was called the anamorphic mumps. So what Panavision did was they introduced 2 more anamorphic elements in there, and they're ever so slightly clocked, so they're like 45 degrees. And as you're racking focus, and you would have that change in squeeze factor, you would have the person's face go wider, those elements, instead of canceling each other, they align with each other, and they fix the squeeze factor.
It basically kind of cancels it out.
Yes. So those lenses are much more challenging mechanically, and this is the result. Like you have absolutely no change in the horizontal field. It's just vertical. And that's where the patent is. Yeah, Gottschalk was like, this is gonna be mine for 60 years.
You also can't buy Panavision.
You can't buy Panavision glass, yes. So that is kind of their strategy. Since you can't buy it, you can only get it from them. I'm still making up my mind on this, all of that. But they certainly have very interesting optics and an approach to it. I feel like we didn't talk enough about the budget side of things, so I'm trying to come up with what's the best strategy. Yes, question.
Are adapters, now that we have lenses like the Surrey or like this, so many options available, would you still go for an adapter depending on the budget, or stretch a little bit and go for it?
That's a good question. So would you go for an adapter to save your budget, or would you just like spend a little more money and get a lens? Like, let's say I can get one of these adapters for $300 and I can get a Surrey lens for $600. What am I choosing? This is a very hard question. The looks are fundamentally different. Like the looks that we're getting from every single new anamorphic lens has been fundamentally different from one another. Among the same set, we have different looks. Like if you look at the Surrey lenses, the first one is very blue. The 50 millimeters, very cold tones overall. And then they made it better for the 35, but then they also switched all of the mounts, and then they switched things again for the 75, and so on. So every lens they release has a different type of compromise. While if you have a set of spherical lenses that you like, let's say you have a bunch of Rokinons, or you have a bunch of contacts, I have a bunch of contacts, Leica, you already have those spherical lenses and you love them. I'm like, this is what I want, I just need this in anamorphic. Then you're gonna spend some more money and you're gonna build a setup around an adapter. Your adapter is gonna go in front of your spherical lenses, and it's going to anamorphize it. It's still a very valid approach. Like there's lots and lots of really good, beautiful images that are filmed with adapters. It just takes a little longer. It can be very frustrating, especially on a personal level. It definitely takes longer on set to set up. Like you can much more easily get this thing clocked So the squeeze is ever so slightly off. And correcting that in post is a nightmare. You don't want to do that. Again, from experience, you really don't want to do that. I've had to shelve entire projects because the lens was like, oh, it's 3 degrees off. Well, this day I'm not getting back in my life. So if you're very careful and very, like, you pay a lot of attention, you can work with adapters. For my own experience, I don't have that patience anymore. I reviewed like 40, 50 adapters, and enough, like enough. I said enough, and then I reviewed 2 more. So don't take everything I say. But on the lenses that we have on the market right now, I think there's lots of good options if you want to go out there and get something and start filming. There's lots of good options. What is the best option is really going to come down to personal choice. It's like how much you want to spend and what kind of look you want. I had all of the Suri lenses, all of them. I've had all of the Greatjoys. I tried all of the Laowas, and in the end, the ones that I was like, I like these the most were the Viltrox, which is like, looks spherical, but with a sprinkle of anamorphic in it. And I was like, these lenses are pretty neat. I like how they are. I like that there's a consistent set. I like that the flares are consistent. The image quality is consistent, and it's nice. Like, it looks good, and I'm happy with it. So in the end, I went for a lower squeeze factor, blue flares, and just like more spherical looking lenses. But that gave me enough character that I was like, this is going to work for most of my projects. And we have been filming a lot on them. Like, Lila has filmed 2 things on them in the last 3 weeks.
And we did, but
Yeah.
we did filters. Should we
Yes.
do a little bit more technical?
So yeah, so to get rid of the edge, they used filtration to soften it up. And it really plays well with the lights. Now the Mercuries, they arrived yesterday, no, 2 days ago, and I started playing with them yesterday. So we were filming something at our place yesterday, and how many times can I say yesterday in this sentence? What I have noticed is that they do cover full frame, but you have a lot of focus fall off towards the edges of the frame. Like, the image is going to get really, really soft if you don't stop down. And that can be character. That can be something that you want. You're like, I'm going to frame everything in the center. I'm going to frame, I'm going to play with the lights being just out of frame, and I want those warm flares. I don't mind the 1.5D squeeze. I think it's great. I think covering full frame is more important than 2 times. I don't know. So what are some of your concerns or choices? Like,
Is this Mercury
Mm.
better than Suri or Greatjoy?
yeah, so the Mercuries, what I like about them more than Suri or Greatjoy, they're fairly more expensive. They're like 3 times the price, almost 4 times the price. But you get a full set. So you would have, like, right from the get-go, you know that there's a 36, there's a 42, there's a 54, 70.
Suri also have
Yeah, Suri also has them now, but when they were coming out, it was like, I'm going to buy this 35, but maybe that's going to be the only lens that I have because I don't know if they're going to make another. So that is the gamble with going with the crowdfunding projects, is you're getting stuff that's cheaper, but at the same time, it doesn't have the attention, not attention to detail. It's like, it feels like they're making a lot of different products and testing out what works and what doesn't work, while Atlas already did that. Like, they made the Orions after a bunch of research, and then several years later, they were like, this is what we want to do now. We want to do warm flares, we want to do full frame, we want to do less squeeze factor, and we want to cut up the price by a lot. And we want things to be consistent. Let's talk to some cinematographers and see what they like. So they went off and talked to people and decided what the flares were going to be, what kind of aberrations they were going to favor in opposition to others, distortion, all of those things they were going to choose and apply them to a set of lenses. Which is not what I feel that Greatjoy or Sure or even Lao was doing is more like, they're like, let's make a lens. Yeah, let's make a lens. Let's do it. Let's go. And then they make a lens, and then they release it, and then people are like, oh yeah, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. And they're like, oh yeah, that didn't. Yeah, they're right, good points. So on their next lens, they fix it. And then they find new problems, and then on the next lens, they fix it. So if you're making content and you're mixing all of those lenses, you're getting very different results. That has been my main challenge. Of course, the level of pickiness is like through the roof. If I am complaining about something, it might, like, I look at some of the stuff that I complained today, and I'm like, 5 years ago, I would have slapped myself in the face if I complained about this. Like, the D-squeeze changes through the focus range. Yes, in 1950, everybody had that, and that was still a great success. Why am I complaining about this now? So it goes a lot with the kind of projects that you want to make and what are the compromises that you are okay to deal with. If you're like, yeah, I don't mind that the D-squeeze is lesser. I don't mind that the flares are blue. Or I don't mind that we have a lot of focus fall off on the top and the bottom. It becomes very personal. So that is why it's challenging when, if someone asks, what is the best one? It's like, yeah.
If just by one lens,
Mm-hmm.
not a set.
Yeah.
Like, do you think like 3 of them or 4 of them? Like, which one? The image.
Yeah, like in terms of image quality, there's not a lot to complain. They're almost all a little too sharp. So yeah, this one not yet. I haven't found this yet a little too sharp, which might be a problem to some people. Maybe they're like, I need this to be sharper, and I don't want to lose a stop. So they would rather go with Sure and add the filter on top. So if you're dealing with just one lens, that is a different game, and it's fair. Like for the longest time, this is the only Atlas lens that I have, the 40mm. I played with it one time and I was like, this is the best lens that I can get in my life. And then I waited 3 years until I convinced them to sponsor some content, and I was like, I want a 40mm. And they're like, the 40? And I was like, yes. The first one. And I was like, yes. Because it's the lens that I like the most. Like, I tested all 6 of the Orion set, and the 40 is like the one that if I have to make a movie with just one lens, that's gonna be it. So for Sure, that would change. Like for Sure, on their original set, I think the 35mm is the sweet spot. On their full frame set, the 50 is not bad. I like the 50, but I think I'm more inclined to the 75. I like 75mm, and it being full frame, it doesn't become that thing where it's like 75mm is too long, because you have the anamorphic D-squeeze, so you have like a lot more field of view. What else? So yeah, Greatjoy, the 85 is the best one, in my opinion. This is all in my opinion, from testing them and being like, I like this, I like that. And all of those lenses are like under $2,000. This is a question, or is it just like I'm just doing a thing?
It's not a question.
Not a question. All right. Yes, a question.
So you said squeeze and de-squeeze factor.
Yeah.
It's going to be consistent for all the lenses because it's like anamorphic, or it's going to be every lens going to be different?
Yeah. It changes a lot. So this big boy is 2 times. The small boy is 1.5. And then the white one that we had over there was 1.33. And then a lot of the Sure lenses are 1.33. And then people are like, 1.33 is not enough. Like, why are you doing this? Anamorphic is like 2 times or nothing. And then they answered with 1.6. And it was better. It was like cool. But then no cameras offer 1.6 D-squeeze. Almost no monitors offer 1.6 D-squeeze. So how do you see that? Also, if your camera doesn't do D-squeeze, or if you don't have a monitor, that's what you're going to be looking at. Like, the image is very compressed, and it becomes a little abstract to think of it and frame it until you do it a lot. Like I can look at that and be like, oh, okay, yeah, this is fine. But even yesterday we were doing a thing where the camera body is rotated sideways and the squeeze is applied the right way. And I was looking at the screen and the camera screen was like going up and I'm like, this is looking good. and Lila was looking at the monitor and going like, there's like 6 miles of headroom in this frame. What's your point? And I was like, oh yeah, because I'm not used to seeing it this way. So just like getting used to seeing it squeezed, if you're using like a Sony camera or a Fuji or like almost anything that's not Panasonic, you won't have that D-squeeze in camera. And that makes a huge difference, like so big. So you have multiple lenses. So yes, they had 1.6, and then they made a full set. They made a 35, 50, 75, 100, all 1.6, all 2.9 aperture. And then people are still complaining. They're like, no, 1.6 is not enough. And they're like, okay, we're going to complete this set. This is going to be one set of lenses. These are all consistent with each other. The longest lens in the set is going to be a 135 millimeters, 1.8. So they changed the squeeze factor in the last lens of the set. And it's like, why are you doing that? Like, if you're calling this a set, why are you making it inconsistent? Those two ideas don't go together. So that's one of the things. Then you have other brands. You have Vazen and you have Greatjoy, which are 1.8. And mathematically speaking, 1.8 is great. 1.8, you have your 4x3 sensor, or like 1.8 is great because it matches the original intention of Anamorphics, where you had your 4x3 film size, and when you project a 1.8 image on it, stretch it out, it goes exactly to CinemaScope, which is 2.39 to 1. So you don't have anything that you have to get rid of on the sides of the image. While with 2x, you would have to. Or even, yeah, let's put a 2x lens on that. I'm going to switch that to a 2x. Let's go with the Lomo, because it's stupid. And that's how we're going to roll today.
This guy right here?
Yeah. Chunk. Sticky. Come on. What? Oh, man. Okay, got him. Whoop.
Got
it. What am I? Oh, okay, this. I think this is easier to pull from the barrel. But I'm going to switch the camera settings to, oh, I guess we're good. Yeah, wow, okay, so that's a lot of flare. And if I stop it down, again, like the rainbows disappear when we stop it down. Whoop. So that's the aperture. Yes. Yes, thanks, Lila. So we're looking at this. Does this look like a CinemaScope image? What is wrong with it? It's too narrow. Yes, it's too narrow. Like this frame is way too long. So if your camera is doing 16:9 video and you are using a 2x lens, you end up with a frame that's like, whoop, Taylor Swift music video. Yes, yes, it's memorable, that's for sure. But it's a problem because now you gotta, like if you want to do it in CinemaScope, you're gonna have to get rid of pretty much half of the image that you're capturing. And you're wasting data on your sensor, basically. So there's a balance there. What else? What are we feeling? I just looked at the time and I'm like, oh my God, it's time to hit that other slide. Because, you know, I always fail on this. And all these workshops just like, oh, it's time, let's go. So let's reach some conclusions. Question?
Oh, yeah,
yes,
I
please.
One just regarding, so I was like you, I used the Atlas Orion
Yeah.
shoot back in 2019. I loved it.
Yeah.
But realizing that a lot of what I do is solo shooting shooter documentary work.
Yeah.
It's way too big.
Yeah.
To really use as a solo shooter, and so we're seeing now the miniaturization of stuff, like even like the nanomorphs, things like
Yes. Yeah.
And my question is like, what are the compromises that we're getting to getting that size? Is it just the glass thins fast, or is
Mhm.
there any like anamorphic specific compromises?
Yes, excellent. It's an excellent question. So for those of you who are not familiar with the name nanomorphs, those are Laowa's lenses. They're about this big, maybe smaller. They cover Super 35, and there's a set of them. There's a 27, a 35, and a 50, I think. They're fast-ish. They're like D2, 2.5, and they're 1.5 squeeze. So you're like, wow, this is great. This is awesome. The biggest difference is, like, while our traditional anamorphic setup for maximum goodness is spherical on the back, anamorphics on the front, the nanomorphs are sphericals all over, anamorphics in the middle. What that does is it changes a lot of the characteristics. Like, you have some pincushion distortion. The flares are like a thin line, unlike, we don't have flares up there, unlike the flares that we have seen from the various anamorphics that we looked at, which are like composed of multiple elements. The nanomorphs flare are just like a little line across the frame, and they're brightly saturated, either blue, orange, or white. They're tiny, they're light, they're great for that type of work. They're not exactly what yells anamorphic to me.
More of like kind of like anamorphic.
Anamorphic, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But the 1.5 squeeze is pretty nice. Like, you are getting a wider field of view. So you're winning some, but you're losing some. As if there's one takeaway from anamorphic filmmaking, is that you never get everything that you want. You either lose in the money department, or you lose in the size department, or you lose in the look department. Somewhere. Okay. Dan.
I have 2 questions.
2 questions. Okay, double or nothing.
Very simple, maybe redundant, but if you were going back 10 years ago,
Yeah.
you had a very tiny budget,
Yeah.
and you were going to answer the question of how do I do anamorphic on a budget?
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
the smallest budget and make it happen. What would you choose?
Yes. So this question is basically my graduation work, because it was literally 10 years ago, and I had a 0 budget. The solution was I went with adapters. I picked a variety of adapters, found the one that I liked the most, tested till the end of time, and then I went off and I filmed a 15-minute pilot on like a Rebel T2i and a 7D. And it was great at the time. I'm still proud of it. The image quality is compromised in some way, but the look super stood out compared to everybody on the same, like in the same school that I was, who was using native EF lenses, Canon L glass, which was like in the like 2010s. You had that like swath of short films that all looked the same. It's like wide open lens, 50 mil f1.4, Canon 5D Mark II. So all of the movies kind of looked the same, and that's what pushed me into anamorphics on a budget, because I was like, I want to make it look different, but I don't want to spend a ton of money. So I went with adapters. At the time, if I were a little bit bolder, I could have gone with Lomos, because they were not that much more expensive at the time, like $1,000. The problem was the cameras were not supportive of PL mount lenses. Like, you would have to hack the body of the camera to fit a PL body in, a PL mount. And I was like, well, this looks very spooky. I kind of like my camera. I don't want to rip it. So, didn't do it. Does that answer it?
Yes, and the second question.
Second question.
If you won the lottery,
Okay, yes.
what would you buy?
If I won the lottery, if I had unlimited budget, I would buy nothing. I would rent for every single project, because that would give me the freedom of choosing the look that better matches the project. if you won just like a little bit of lottery and you're like, well, I can afford one set of lenses, then that's a whole different question. At the moment, I'm torn. My answer is going to be Atlas for both, either the Mercuries or the Orions. I really like how those two look. I haven't tried the Mercuries far enough to be like, yes, these are my favorites, or no, these are not my favorites. I just like them as a company, and I like the work that they do for the lenses and what they're delivering to their customers. I think the value holds up. So that's my take. But they are above like the basic budget level. You would have to win the small lottery to get this stuff and be like, I'm fine. I am not worried about my finances at all. That's not my situation. Okay, more questions? Is that a question? Yes.
I'm not sure if this like covers the topic with the budget side, but like I know you talked a lot about like adapters and lenses, but is there like any way that you can achieve the look without getting an adapter? And
Yes.
And then just because I'm looking to try out some like shots with Anamorphic, but
Yeah.
I don't want to spend too much.
Yes, that is a great question. I don't know if everybody has this. Does everybody has this? If you go on the back, the very end of it, there's a thing called anamorfake it until you make it. And if you don't have one of these papers, there's more here. So grab them. And the idea was, I don't want to spend any money. I just want to use the lenses that I have and make it look sort of fancy. So you can install an insert in your aperture in the aperture of your lens. Like I've modified Rokinon's contacts, I modified some Nikon, some Tokina, a variety of lenses, just like opening it up. Then you get to the aperture and you drop in an insert with an oval cut out on it. You're going to lose about a stop of light, but you get oval bokeh. So you're like, okay, this tricks some people. You throw on top a Pro Mist, 1/8, 1/4, depending on your focal length. You took the edge of it. It's like much more organic. Then if you want to like go even further, you can add a streak filter. So you're going to get your flares. They're much less organic than the stuff we were seeing today. They're like straight line all across. They're more saturated. There's some level of control over the strength of the streaks depending on the spacing of the lines. I should have brought one. But you can get those for fairly cheap. Or if you're like, I don't want it, the consequence of using a streak filter is your bokeh is going to get a bunch of lines through. So some people are like, don't touch bokeh. If you do that, I'm going to mess you up. So if you don't want to do that, you can do flares in post. Like you can do, there's a plugin called Optical Flares. It's been used extensively in Hollywood films. And it's pretty straightforward. And you can add distortion in post. So you can go and simulate distortion fairly easily in After Effects. In Resolve is the easiest thing. So then you added oval bokeh, you added flares, you added distortion. Am I missing? And you added some softness, or like a more of an organic diffused glow. And then you don't tell people that that's spherical, and there you go. Like half of the game is not telling. I made an April Fool's joke one time where I was like, I'm making this lens, and it was just that. Like I anamorphaked a set of Rokinons and I filmed a bunch with it, and I was like, this is going to be the lens of your dreams. It's going to be cheap. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. And then it wasn't, and people got very upset about it. So it was a lesson to not play too much into the dreams if you're making a joke. But it's very worth it. Most of the times if you're starting out and you don't know what to buy, and you have lenses that you don't mind opening up, I'd say start there. Like, it's a lot of fun. It makes you appreciate your gear a lot more, because you start taking it apart and you see the amount of detail that goes into it, and you're like, oh my God, somebody had to think about this. And it allows you to get very close to look. Like, really, if you don't tell, people won't call you out.
Goes the mod.
Hmm?
Goes
Yeah, so the mod, you can make it yourself. You can measure and design it. I have tutorials on it. I also sell the inserts for a bunch of lenses. So go on my website and you're going to find out. I don't know if I added a discount code to this. It's like $15 for a pair. I don't think I had it here. Okay, I'm going to get your emails and send a discount code if you want to buy stuff. But hybrid anamorphics. Oh yes, great. I'm trying to get to at the end here. So Hawk is a company that makes anamorphic lenses. They're in Germany, and a while back they announced these Hawk minis, mini Hawks, and they're called hybrid anamorphics. And then you're like, hybrid anamorphics, what does that mean? So Blake and I went to Sim Camera by Boundary, and they had a set, and I was like, yo, can I try this out? And they're like, yeah. And they set us up with like a huge amount of lenses. And so we filmed for an entire morning, and what those lenses are is they're spherical lenses. When they were designed, Vantage, who makes the Hawk lenses, favored like spherical aberration and other things that you see in anamorphic lenses for like the types of artifacts and character that you see on anamorphics. They put it in those lenses, but there's no squeeze. And then they made an oval aperture that you can adjust. So you can open it up and close it, unlike the oval insert. And then they said, this is a hybrid anamorphic lens. To which you're like, there's no anamorphic in it. There's the anamorphic look, that's for sure, and they look really good. But they're also like $35,000 per lens, while your Rokinon might be like $150. So if you put them head to head, and you're comparing the budget as well, you're winning with the Rokinon.
Is it kind of similar to what like Iron Glass did with their?
Sort of. So Iron Glass started doing that because of the tutorials I made.
Oh. Wow.
Yes. And they're great. Like they went way further. They rehoused the whole thing. I'm never gonna get to it. I'm done. Like Iron Glass is taken over, and I'm happy with it. But yes, that is the same vibe. Like you open the lens up, you open a Galius 44, which is a $50 lens. You put an insert, you close it up. The lens has already a ton of character, and then you get oval bokeh, and then you're like, this is anamorphic, ha ha ha. And people are like, wow, this is anamorphic. So yes. Yeah. Yes, yes. So they're charging $3,000 on a rehousing of a $50 lens. Is it worth it? You decide.
Sold out for a year. Last time I looked, it was like
Yeah, and like they used it on the Batman, and like rehousing has a point. If you take this $50 lens and you take it to like an MOW, you take it to any actual set, the lens is gonna be broken before take one, because like the motor is gonna rip the helicoid. The lens is gonna split in two. Iris not gonna hold up. They're gonna be inconsistent. So you need the mechanics that are that will survive set work. That is the point of rehousing. All right. Okay. Conclusions.
To complete the
Okay. How do you plan or hope to use anamorphics moving forward in your work or in your life? Are you going to buy lenses? Are you going to modify lenses? Are you going to rent? Are you going to just be like, yeah, I don't really like that thing anymore? What's your vibe?
I'm going to continue renting.
You're going to continue renting. That's a good plan, solid plan.
I'm gonna try to rehouse that Helios myself.
Yes, do it. It's so much fun. You're going to be done in like 20 minutes.
The last time I rehoused something, it broke.
I've broken like a dozen.
Yeah, but
After you break the first one, it's very hard to break the second. Yeah, there's a bunch of tutorials on my channel, so you can really just like follow the steps, and you will make it through.
what do you do with the $400 glass paperweight though?
That is the hard part. You try to fix it. You find a lens tech, and you figure if their quote is cheaper than buying a new one. Yeah, I really started at $50 before you go further. Yeah, I've broken some expensive stuff, and I was like, oh. Yeah.
That's experience.
Yeah. Well, It was, yeah, I broke a $1,200 lens once, and I was like, oh my God. Then I sat on and waited for 2 years, and then I found someone who could fix it. But yeah, 2 years of not using it. Okay, so renting, modding. Renting. Yeah, more renting.
I think I'd like to do more tests.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the thing about tests is you can ring up a rental house and go. They will be happy to take you and like to show you things because you're a potential client.
Yeah.
So they really facilitate things.
I've done
Yeah.
that a handful of times.
Yeah.
A handful of projects now. But
Yeah.
like, I think certain primo gear is still like at the cusp of being available to me.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna probably keep chipping away at that.
Yeah. Renting is a really good solution if you're unsure of where you want to go. Like if you're like, I want to buy this, but I'm not sure, rent it. Rent the thing. Find someone that owns it and try to rent it from them for a day for a lens test. Just like chat with the person. If you have any questions, you can shoot me emails. I've tested almost everything below $5,000 and some things above $5,000. What is your key takeaway from this workshop? That it was a lie, that there's no anamorphic and budget in the same sentence. You were going to say something.
No, this is very informative.
Okay.
Even just learning about the history. I didn't know the tank thing was very interesting.
Right? Yeah, I always find that the most fascinating part.
That's what I'm going to tell the clients from now on.
Yes. Yeah.
To win World War I,
Yeah. If the lenses were good to win the war, they're definitely going to win your clients. Yeah, the history part is like the more obscure thing. And then last time we did it was a lot, the last 2 times I tried to make it a lot more hands-on. I was just like, let's go and touch the stuff. And then there was not a lot of engagement. It was just a lot of, like, I don't want to touch the stuff that is expensive. And I'm like, I understand. So this time we made it different. How was this experience? Did this work for you? Is there anything you would like to see they haven't seen?
Can we touch the mercury?
All right. All right. There you go. You can take the caps and look. I just, for passing it around. Yeah? Be my guest? Chris, I think he wants to look at different things, so just, yeah.
Well, before we sort of break up, let people walk around, I want to thank you very much for this.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much. This is always way too much fun, and I feel like I talk way too much and never drink enough water. So.
There is nice cold ice water.
It was cold when I got it, but now it's no longer. Do I have any other? No, it's just a thank you card.
I want to hear his question.
Yes, question.
Oh no, I was going to say where any place you recommend rent the Viltrox is in the city?
I
or-
don't know if they're around, so me.
Oh.
Yeah, like if you want to test them out, just send me an email. If you have a project you want to use them, just send me an email. I'll probably not charge you for it. Yeah. Yeah, unless you're like, I am making thousands and thousands of dollars on this project. I'll be like, give me 100. But yeah, one of my main goals with all of this anamorphic stuff is to just like encourage people to explore and try it out and have fun and figure if I like this or I don't like this. So, yeah, send me an email.
What mounts are yours?
PL.
Oh.
I'm trying to get everything in PL now. No more anything else. Yeah, I went for a bunch of L mounts, got rid of all of it. EF is gone. I just have my contacts in EF at this point. What else? Oh, if nothing else, thank you for coming.
Everybody on set kept coming and saying, "Oh, what are these lenses? They look nice." Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they're like officially out yet. They send me emails all the time being like, yo, when are you pushing the next video about this? And I'm like, I don't know. But hopefully soon enough. Yeah, I really like the look that they deliver. The sprinkle. What else do I have here? No. Subscribe for more. Boom. Wow. Some self-promotion here. Yeah, the channel is a great resource. I think my email is here. I don't know. I wrote this like a month ago and I forgot everything that went on it. So if my email is not in here, it's just my last name at gmail.com. And you can email me any questions, concerns. If you're ever like, I'm trying this out and it's really not working, like, message me. I will reply.
Not social media.
Not social media. If you go on Instagram or Facebook, the chance that I will reply is very, very low. I'm trying to abandon everything. I'm just YouTube and life. Email is somewhere in between. Yeah, just trying to not do the social media thing.
Is that because of the community, like at large? Or?
No. Yeah. Yeah, no, there is a group that I'm a mod in, and it's like the Anamorphic Shooters, which is like a 20,000 people in the group, and it's a lot. It's a lot, and I'm like, I feel like I don't have that much to say at this point, or I don't want to engage in arguments. I just want to like play with the lenses, do fun stuff, talk to real people, instead of engaging in like, 2 times is way better, man. And I'm like, sure, for you. And they're like, no, for everybody. I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So, yeah. So I find that is way more entertaining and productive to just like gather 15, 20 people and talk about it. Thank you. You guys want to check this out? No? Okay, good. Yeah, what else? I think this is it for me. This is it for me. Yeah, it's really fun. It's also really stressful. So if you try and it doesn't work, don't give up on the first one. The best gear is the one you have at hand. Yeah. Okay. Whee! Thank you.